we're going to talk about just kind of beginning, or starting the path of Ifa, depending on where you are in your journey. Even if it's a restart for you or somebody is still kind of new, you know a lot about it. You're in this situation. This topic is for you, so don't feel excluded just because of starting at this particular position, because this is what most new or beginners face when they first try to start practicing the tradition. So the number one thing you need to understand is that Ifa is based on a priesthood, right? Which is very much so important. That means that there is someone, a Babaláwo, an Ianifa, who is going to work on your behalf and do a lot of things for you to help you to achieve the balance and the harmony that you desire in your life. All right, that's very, very critical. Likewise, Ifa is a communal tradition by its very nature, by the culture that it began from. And so it is important for us to be aware of that dynamic, even if we can't participate in it holistically as we would like to at times. Okay. So one of the questions that I did get from you guys is, can you begin learning about, Ifa, honoring your Ori without having a Babaláwo or a community, right? And so it's very important for you to understand, like I said before, Ifa is based on the priesthood. So in order for you to have proper guidance as you begin to fully integrate into the tradition, and Babaláwo is very important in it. And Ianifa, a lot of times I just say Babaláwo, but if you're working with an Ianifa, that's perfectly fine as well. The two work in conjunction with each other. You can definitely begin to learn about the tradition on your own. I actually encourage that. You don't want to just go straight way to start working with someone if you don't understand the tradition, at least to a certain level, because therein you can easily get misled or confused. It's not all the time that somebody is trying to, mislead you or cause you problems or challenges, but it's a lot of confusion. It's a lot of confusion, and that comes oftentimes, I think, just because there is so much information out there about the tradition, and we're going to get into that part as well, right? Somebody asked, is it dangerous to start learning alone? So it's not inherently dangerous by any means, right? But you should exercise caution and wisdom when you begin to learn about the tradition, understanding that the information that is presented comes from different houses or elays. So it may not be the same all the time. There absolutely will be. There is contradictions throughout. You may see somebody post something and it is completely different than what you've seen somebody else post. And it even so could be somebody who is practicing within the same lineage. So, for instance, someone who is practicing Isheshe out of Nigeria, 2 or 3 people, and they post something, and the information could be different. In some cases, it is a matter of some of the information not being correct. In other cases, it could be a case or situation of the information being specific to that particular house or system. So you're going to have to navigate that when you do begin to self-study and you begin to pick up different resources, because you can hear different things throughout the course of that process, right? That being said, it is never okay to begin doing any type of ritual work based on the Ifa tradition. I'm not talking about like general ancestral work, which I'll get to as well. I'm talking about actual Ifa based ritual work. It's not a good idea to begin that, because for one, that requires consecrated items, and if you're just beginning it, you obviously don't know how to do that. Even if you did, it would still be consecrated by someone else and not you in most instances, right? Divination, the same thing. You can't just go out and pick up an open board and, a Pele chain or something like that and start divining for yourself without previous knowledge and understanding of the Holy Odu and the codes and things like that that come with it, right? So I would not advise that either, even if you just so happen to find somebody who is training in that aspect. If you're not initiated, that's not something that you should be trying on your own, because you can cause yourself a whole lot of problems within that dynamic, right? So let's see. A lot for your hidden beauty. So you've been researching pouring libations without being part of any EFA community. That does that make my practices less valid? Someone was part of an EFA community? Absolutely not. You can pour libations on your own. If you're pouring them, it depends on who you're pouring them to, right? So if you're pouring out libations to your ancestors, I would say you're pretty safe with that. I wouldn't encourage anybody to pour out libations to the Orishas or any other spirits outside of their ancestral forces if they don't know how to do it, right? So if you just started to practice and you just want to do the libations to your ancestors, it's a beautiful thing to do so, but not to Orishas when you don't understand the energy signature. Is that knowing how to do it, number one, is important, but also the energy signal, because even you can maybe look at a video, you think, okay, I know how to do this because I saw somebody else doing it. But if you don't know how to recognize the energy of that Orisha, you could be pouring out libations to any spirit, and you could be inviting some not so great forces into your life. So you do have to be mindful of that reality as well. Okay. Um, Another question I received is, how do I know if Ifa is calling me, right? So a calling towards Ifa oftentimes appears as like you just constantly feel curious about the tradition. You're getting repeated signals and things like that, especially when you're not searching it out. It may be that you're dreaming about the Orishas, or you're dreaming about symbology connected to the Orishas, or you just keep encountering it in your day-to-day life. And you're not like going to a bookstore looking for Ifa books. You're not walking into an Ifa temple or something like that. You just may be out and about, running errands or something, and you just keep coming across either information or people who are tied to the tradition. That's a strong indicator, right? That Ifa may be calling you, like as I said before, the Orishas. Now, and I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it, you do have to be careful if you are consistently like studying the Orishas or something like that, and then you start to have dreams about the Orishas, because this happens a lot with people. They're like, well, I'm having dreams about Oshun, for instance, but they've spent the last 3 or 4 days doing deep level research about Oshun. So, it's highly likely that they would dream about her. That's just normal, human behavior. It doesn't mean that there is not a connection between that individual and Ocean, because it could be. But, just exercise caution and understanding with that reality, because it's not always that straightforward. Okay. The only way to truly confirm is if Ifa is your path is through Ifa divination. You'll get a reading, and is this the path for me? Is this the best path that I should walk in, Ifa, or what have you? Or if you have other traditions or something like that that you're considering working with, or you want to work with another Orisha more so than Orumula, Ifa, then you can absolutely ask about that reality. But that's the best way to know. And saying that, it's not that you go and get a reading and just say, what is the best path for me? Because you're going to need to present some options. Because IFA is not intuitive to where somebody's just going to tell you, well, you should be practicing like, a list of different traditions without you prompting that reality. Okay, I got a question here. Can I call you? It would be the best thing, or like to discuss. So you can DM me. I don't get on the phone. I don't have a lot of time to take phone calls beforehand, but you can absolutely DM me on IG if you have a question prior to booking with us, and I will try my best to get your questions answered. And I'm at Asanee 44 on IG. So Yeah, that's the only place to you can DM me. You can also email me support@asanee44.com as well. Okay. So yes, absolutely. Um Alafia, greetings, alien black girl. Okay, you're very welcome. You understand, you're welcome. Okay, so um going to the next question you guys asked. What is the first thing I should do if I want to practice IFA, right? That's the most common question I think I got. And so I know it probably doesn't sound sexy, or, it's not something you go in and just start moving forward in the tradition. But I always just strongly suggest learning. I'm all about education, because without the proper education, you can go in, you can make a lot of mistakes. And usually people fall on two ends of the spectrum when it comes to the educational aspects of understanding Ifa. On one hand, people come to it thinking that it's a genie in the bottle type of scenario. And then on the other end, people are dealing with this colonized mentality that is the money, right? And so you want to get into a space of balance, because it's neither one of those realities. And it's very important to educate yourself. A lot for you to everybody on Instagram. I see you guys and appreciate you showing up. You want to be aware of this particular reality, right? That, what the tradition is and what the tradition is not. I think that's important starting off. And, it's just a great precursor. If you want to do something like more advanced, if you want practical, hands on things to do, I always advise to start working with your ancestors through a diaspora tradition. And I'm going to get deeper into that later on as well, because that question came up too about working with your ancestors before practicing, when you're beginning to practice the tradition. Faye, you are saying there's a specific time frame that should be followed while educating themselves of the Ifa divination system before initiating. That's a great question. Thank you for that. It is not, right? I wholeheartedly believe that, this is going to fall on you. There are some people who, even so, they need to get initiated pretty quickly. But I feel like you're going to know when you are ready for that reality. You're going to get enough information. And even so, the decision to initiate is not just going to be from a logical perspective. It'll come to you intuitive, like, yeah, I know that it is the right time for me, right? So, I feel like you should go from that reality, unless it is a situation where it is urgent, because that does happen, like I said. So it may be that, you may be facing major life challenges, even so death or something like that, that you need to go ahead and take that path to full on initiate, or even so receive the hand of Ifa. And so in those cases, I still say, exercise wisdom. Make sure that you're not being pressured into doing it, right? Because if somebody tells you that in a reading, they should tell you if it comes up in the reading, but they shouldn't pressure you, right? It shouldn't be like, you need to do this right now, or else, this is going to happen to you. They present the information to you. You make the decision after that. If you feel pressure, I would strongly caution you against going down that path if you don't feel like it's your actual decision that you're making. Okay. Greetings, Johnny. Thank you. Thank you for joining. It's been a while. Okay, so next one. Can I study Ifa from books only? So books are great. I absolutely love books. I'm an author. I love to write books. I love to read books, right? But they are definitely not the end all be all when it comes to truly understanding the tradition at a high level. They're great, and they come with that same caveat as I mentioned before. If you're getting books from different people, you are going to get different aspects of the tradition, which can be great to, get those different perspectives, but it can also be confusing if there is major contradictions with the information that you are intaking. So be mindful of that as well. Okay. Books should never, ever, ever replace the oral transmission or the mentorship that takes place in working with somebody within the tradition, especially Isheshe, because Isheshe is very much so relational. In Lukami and what is the other one? Santeria and those types of practices, they tend to be more transactional. So you can, likely get away with definitely doing ritual work and offerings and things like that without having to have that close connection with a Babaláwo or an ENF. But in Isheshe, you do want those connections. I would encourage it either way, but everybody is different when it comes to that notion. You're very welcome, Faye. Okay, let's see. You're saying true. Yes, so this is the reality of what we live, what we're dealing with as far as the tradition goes. Another question is about YouTube and social media, right? Is that enough to learn? I would actually caution you not to lean too heavily on these types of sources, social media, especially as your primary teacher, because there's a lot of convolution there, more so than in books in many cases. Because usually, if somebody sits down to truly write a book, they're going to spend time with that information and they're going to flesh it out and help you to understand it better. And of course, it depends on the book. It's not every book that does this because there's not a lot of great written books, in my opinion, on the tradition, right? But social media can be even worse because then you got a hodgepodge of so many different things going on within the tradition. Some people are very much so sincere when they present information. You have a lot of people behind the scenes who are not even into the tradition. They're just showing up saying stuff, right? And it's for so many different reasons. It's not even all about them trying to get money from you. Some people are just genuinely trying to confuse you because they don't want you to go into the tradition. Let's see. You're saying, is it okay to set up an altar in confinement? When you say confinement, you mean in prison or something like that? And that being said, sorry, I thought I was finished with that. Is social media should never substitute for getting guidance from a priest or a priestess in the tradition. Because as I said before, there may be some nuances in the information that comes from the elay or the house that you're working with and the information that you might find online. So you want to be careful with that, okay? You want somebody to help you to filter all of that information. So going back to your question about, you said, is it okay to set up an altar in confinement? And so you're talking about an prison environment. Yeah, so it depends on the prison rules. Obviously, there are going to be limitations. I did do a full episode about practicing Ifa in prison that I encourage you to watch. It's on my YouTube channel as well as on Spotify. So both on, well, YouTube is the Asanee 44 Ashe Academy. So it's at Asanee 44. And then I think the podcast on Spotify is the African Spirit Reintegrated and Reimagined. Right. So either way, I encourage you to watch that because it gives a whole lot more details about that. But it depends on the prison system in general. You can set up an altar to your ancestors. Also, let me go back to that. An altar to the Orishas, no, that can't happen because of the constituents. Like you couldn't even get the things in there that are required to put an altar for Orishas from Isheshe practice, true Isheshe practice in there. But if you are talking about an ancestor altar, you can with some caveats. You say an you have an Ela? Are you saying Elay as in the temple or house? Or are you trying to say Ifa? Or are you trying to say you have an Ifa altar or an Ifa icon? I don't get that. Okay. So greetings to you guys who are showing up. Alrighty, so he said, I will get in contact. I'm glad you're an author as well. Would like to discuss getting a book written through your way of getting my story out. Okay, just reach out to me and we'll have those discussions. Okay. Question: did you know that? Okay. Let me, sorry, guys. Let me block this. All right. I want to play games today. Let's see. You're saying is practicing Ifa compatible with other spiritual lineages like indigenous Colombian systems? So I don't know if you mean if you're talking about like the indigenous Colombia way of being or practicing or what have you, their traditional spirituality. I don't know much about that. If you're talking about Ifa derived practices that are in Colombia and other parts of South America and the Caribbean, absolutely, because many of they are derived right from the tradition. Now, it depends to what you mean by the word compatibility. I've seen a lot of times where people may start in the Ifa derived traditions in the diaspora and they will, get to a certain point and then they want to go and they want to practice Isheshe out of, West Africa, Nigeria in particular, in most instances. But in other instances, it might be what is it, Ghana, Benin, Togo, somewhere like that, right? In those cases, there is actually a lot of contradiction in how the traditions are carried out. So it really depends on the practice. Foundationally, yeah, because they all operate from a system of nature based, I don't want to use the word worship, but you know, I say harmonizing with nature and working with nature based spirits and things like that. So, on the surface or foundationally, I would say, yeah, there are discrepancies in how things are carried out within each tradition. So, that's going to be a little bit different. So, you're saying, oh, you're talking about a worship house, you have an elay. Even so, having an elay, I don't know if you are in prison or if you're asking for somebody else who is in prison, going back to your question even having an elay outside of the prison system, you still can't get a lot of the things that are required for the actual shrines into the prison system because they're oftentimes considered to be contraband. So you would have to ask, if that's your situation. I don't know why you're asking the question. If that's your situation or somebody else's situation that you're talking about, it's prudent to ask specifically about those realities. Okay, greetings to everybody who is coming in, showing up. Greetings to you guys, and on Instagram as well. So, the next question. All right, what is the next step after you get your first reading? You guys asked about this too. So, ideally, you want to go ahead and complete your elbow, which is the ritual work that comes after it. I don't know if the question was from that position or something else, but that's the first step that you want to take. I encourage you all to definitely study the reading in depth. Don't look at it as something that's just passing. Oh, I got to read. This is what I need to do right now, and then just push it to the side. Like, take your time and study it. Look at it every day for about 7 days or so, even for up to 14 days or so. After you get the reading, highlight it, underline it, different things in there. Look up things that you're not familiar with, even concepts that you are familiar with. Understand how that applies to you in your particular situation, because you can get a lot of knowledge just from that alone. Like, okay, well, this reading said I need to feed Ogun and I need to give Ogun a dog. Okay, so why am I feeding Ogun? Who is Ogun, right? Well, it may tell you. I don't know how. I know our readings will tell you, like, you're dealing with this problem. You need to feed Ogun for this particular situation, and this is what Ogun wants. That's how our readings work. I don't know how it will work with everybody else, how it does work with everybody else. That being said, my thing is get a whole lot more knowledge and information about the reading itself, because that's going to help you to understand Ifa. Once you do the ritual work, pay attention to the signs, to the things that are going on after you do the ritual work. Because the reading, if you just got a reading, you didn't do the ritual work, you're probably going to end up experiencing some adverse things that came out in the reading. And, sometimes they may prompt you to go ahead and do the ritual work thereafter. But either way it goes, if you don't do the ritual work, the reading can still be beneficial for you to go back to. Let me say that too, because it may come out in, excuse me, taboos may come out, warnings, even so you may get information about who your head or Orisha is, or some behavioral modifications that you need to make and things like that. So I'm not saying it's not, beneficial at all. But if you do the Ebo, you can see how everything correlates to the reading, and you can also see how it works, right? The ritual work. What does it actually do for you? And I encourage you to just start there. Like, a reading alone can take you a good 3 to 6 months just to unravel that into understanding and how it applies to your life. And you're paying attention, you're taking notes, and you're seeing, okay, did this happen or did that happen? And you'll just automatically know, oh, the reading said that XYZ would happen. And even if it's something that is not tangible, you'll just know, oh wow, this happened, and you automatically correlate it to the reading. And obviously, if it's something that's physical, it's going to happen. Like, it's coming up that you might meet a mate soon. Then, obviously, if you meet that mate, you'll see the accuracy of the reading. And I harp on this part is because it's so important for you to understand who you're working with. When you get a reading, you do the ritual work, you want to make sure that it's actually working for you before you go down that path with that particular individual, because that's going to help you decide who you want as your godparent before you go through the full initiation process, okay? Beyond that, you should follow any instructions that are given to you beyond just the ritual work or what have you, and the taboos and the warnings, etc. All right. You might be told, it's a great idea for you to, get your hand up Ifa, or if you can't do that, to get some Elekis to start connecting with Arumula, or if you might need to go through full-on Ifa initiation. So at the right time, I'm not saying like just because the reading said get initiated, you jump up and you go and get initiated, or do any of the rest of it. Like I said before, you need to be intuitively led about this is the right process for you. It should never be about pressure. But if it does come up that you need to get initiated and it's something that you feel like you want to do, you should begin to prepare for that reality, whether it be, a few months, a few years, or what have you out. You should begin preparing for that reality. Through that process, continue to study. It was a lifelong process of studying and gathering information and understanding how the spiritual forces work with us, in us, and through us. Okay. Your question is, do you happen to know any communities in New Jersey? And if you do, can you point me in a direction to contact them? Unfortunately, I do not. I don't recommend any communities outside of what we do, because I know what we do and I know how well our work is done. I just don't recommend anybody else unless I absolutely know them, because it's a lot of things that go on out here in the tradition. Okay, so another question that you all asked, do I need to initiate before doing anything in Ifa? So understand that initiation is primarily important if you want to become a priest or a priestess, right? You definitely need to get initiated for that. Certain individuals who have to avoid like significant life challenges, death, things like that I said before. Otherwise, it's not mandatory. Even though it comes up in the reading, it's not like, you can't do anything at all in the tradition without it getting initiated. You can absolutely study the tradition. You can work on your character. You can even get sacred vessels and things like that, the icons and the pots, and you can wear the lekis. And there's so much that you can do in the tradition without being initiated, right? But there are also limitations to what you can do if you don't get initiated. So it just depends on what side of the path that you want to be on. But it's not like, you cannot practice Ifa, you cannot move forward, you can't get a reading, you can't do anything unless you are initiated. That's just not true. You're saying you're grateful for my response. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Let's see. Practicing Ifa without a local community. So, what do I do if there's no Ifa temple near me? That's the reality for a whole lot of people in the diaspora. That's just how it goes, right? So you can obviously seek out somebody, work with somebody who is long distance. This even happens with people who are some people from Yoruba land who come out of the country, Nigeria, Ghana, where have you, and they move abroad. So they usually are still practicing back home with their local community. Now it's different for them if they were brought up in that particular community, so they have those connections there and things like that. They're not scrambling. But the reality is, there are also a lot of people who are first generation outside of their country, in whatever land they're in, whether it be U.S., UK, Australia, Canada, anywhere else, right? And so they were born and raised outside of there. And they are first generation in that other country, and their parents don't practice Ifa. They don't practice the tradition at all. Matter of fact, a lot of times the parents are against them even going into the tradition. So they have to navigate their way back into the tradition the same way that any of the rest of us do in the diaspora, right? And people function very well working with long distance priests and priestesses. It all is about what you want, what you desire. Okay. So you can do that. You want to go ahead and establish, daily practices while also maintaining a connection through that elay, right? Consistent communication, continuously talk to them. And I will say this too, understand that you're probably going to have to reach out to them more so than them reaching out to you, because it can get really, really busy doing this work. I'm constantly busy every day, and I work with quite a few people. And so many times somebody comes to my head and I want to sit and just, call them or text them and see how they're doing. But a lot of times I just do not have time for their reality, because it's a lot of things that we're doing. And so, don't get offended by their reality if they are not reaching out to you. It depends on whatever boundaries have been established within that relationship. But I encourage you, reach out to the people that you are working with and keep that communication up. Take initiative, let them know that you're there and you want to learn, and they will be more than willing to help you 9 times out of 10 if they are truly about the tradition. Okay, let's see. You're asking, are the chants useful if you're not initiated? Yeah, there are many incantations that you can say without being initiated. A lot of the incantations are specific to the orishas, and a lot of times you do need to have an orisha icon for it to be activated to its fullest, right? But you don't have to be initiated. You can just have the icon and work with the incantations. You can even say the incantations without the icon, but a lot of times that's what it's for, because it's part of the praise and worship process. So when you're working with your icon, you're saying the incantations, and you're doing your regular prayers, and you give the icon whatever offerings or what have you that you're doing for that particular period. Another question is, how do I stay committed to IFA without an in-person community? So, I mean, I understand the questioning being about, accountability, but the reality is, like, you need to stay accountable to IFA regardless of the status of the community, because community is one thing and it's great and it's absolutely part of the tradition, but there are things that you have to do on an individual level every single day to keep yourself intact, because it's not always about the communal events. Like, you have your own Orisha icon so that you can work with the Orishas personally. And that's a huge way to stay aligned, is to get your icon. So that way you have this physical representation in front of you. And well, it's not just the representation, it's actually the physical essence of the Orisha in this sacred vessel in front of you. And it's a continual reminder of their presence in your life and how you can connect with them, how you should be connecting with them. So you won't forget about, oh, I need to, pray or talk to Ifa if you have a hand of Ifa that's in your space that you're seeing on a daily basis, right? You won't have those particular uh situations for any of the orishas that you have. But it's easy to forget about or not, I don't necessarily say forget about, but to neglect working with the orishas if you don't have that physical vessel at present. It depends on how spiritual you are as a person. So you also want to schedule regular check-ins with your priest, receive regular divination to understand your path. That's important because if a divination is about understanding your destiny, a lot of people think it's just about getting information for the here and now because I'm facing this particular challenge and I just want to know how to overcome it. Or some people just want to know in general, what's going on in my life. If a divination is not a psychic reading, it is a reading that tells you about your destiny in that point in time, what you need to do, what's going on in the backdrop, what some future potential outcomes are for you in your life. So staying close to just the divination system alone is very, very important. Obviously, you're going to do the ritual work to assuage your situation. So make it more calm and peaceful, balanced, etc. You want to study the foundational teachings of Ifa in a structured, focused manner, if that's what you're about. Some people don't want that deep level of knowledge or integration with Ifa. They just want to do the readings and the ritual work, and it's perfectly fine as well. You don't have to go that deep in it. But if you are trying to really and truly practice and understand it and live according to the principles of Ifa, you want to keep studying, you want to keep focusing on it. Another question that I received from you guys is how often should I travel to see my priest if I live far away from them? So this is going to really depend on you, how deeply you want to engage with the tradition as far as seeing it and being in front of it on a day-to-day basis, right? So of course, if you get initiated, you must be there in person. So you're gonna have to travel to see them if they live at a distance from you, whatever that looks like, whether it be, all the way in Nigeria and you're like in the US or something, or whether it just be, across the country. Maybe you live in Texas and you travel to like California or something like that. It just depends on whatever the scenario is. So you're gonna have to go obviously for that. If you are training or studying to be a priest, you're gonna need to be there in person for a part of that reality as well, right? You may want to travel abroad for like special festivals, events, and ceremonies and things like that are hosted by your elate, or even so your elate is somehow affiliated with, associated with. But that's on you. It's not a mandatory requirement. Even so, people that are local and they have that community, they don't go to every single event, right? That is part of the tradition. Some of them do, some of them don't. It really just depends on their reality and what's going on in their life at that particular time. Okay. Somebody asked me as well, is long distance mentorship effective? It can be, right? We offer mentorship and we do it, I hope, effectively, right? That's what people have said. They've enjoyed our process. But it has to be obviously accountability. There has to be structure present. You have to know what's going on, how that connection is aligned, if it's aligned first, and then how you are going to meet up, how you're going to, organize everything. So it's not just saying I have a mentor like if you really want it to be effective, you need to meet with your mentor on a regular basis, maybe once a week, and really hash out or flesh out some things that you need to know about the tradition. It can be the same reality applies, right? Even to a face-to-face mentorship scenario, it still needs to be well structured for it to be beneficial to you. You want to communicate clearly, set your expectations there, etc. So it can be, like I said. Another, well, this is the next section, is about what can you safely do before you initiate into the tradition, right? So, as I've said many times, you want to study, study, studying, gain an understanding of what Ifa is, understand its discipline, understand its wisdom, all right? You want to seek Ifa divination. You want to do your ritual work as you're guided to do. You want to acquire and work with your own Orisha icons. That's a very important part of the process. That being said, I do not encourage, anybody to do anything speedily. You should do it when you are intuitively led and ready to do so. So don't mistake this conversation for me saying go out and get, an Orisha icon if you were practicing by yourself, because that's not the conversation. The conversation is that these items can help you more as you practice as an independent or a solo practitioner without a local community around you. And that being the case, you still need to get these things when you are ready for them on multiple levels, because it's not just about getting an icon and just putting it in your house and sitting it there just to say you have an icon. Like, if you're not ready for the responsibility of continuously working with it, you have to feed it. You want to pray to it. You want to establish a relationship or a connection with it. So you need to be ready on that level first and foremost. Obviously, you need to be ready financially for that reality. You need to be ready socially. And what I mean by that is, if you are living with other people, is this something that you can realistically have in your environment without it creating challenges with the people that you live with? Because some people have that problem too. They may be ready, but the people that they live with may not be about that. And so that can cause a lot of confusion and friction within the household dynamic as well. Another question was about using Obi divination before without being initiated. So can you do or use Obi divination without being initiated into the tradition? Yes, you can. However, you must have a consecrated Orisha icon, right, in order to effectively divine. Otherwise, you're just getting color nuts and throwing them. And that's not how that works. So don't think it's like you can just go online, you see a post about, this is how you do Obi divination, and you go out and get some color nuts and just start throwing them. That must be done unto a consecrated icon or pot that's a sacred vessel in the tradition, like the hand of Ifa, right? Like an Aj pot or an issue statue, whatever it may be. You need the proper tools to do that correctly. Otherwise, you're just throwing the Obi, and yeah, so it could say, it could fall, it will fall in a certain pattern. But is that correct? Because you don't know, because you don't have the essence of that spirit there with you, helping to direct that energy and give you the proper answer for it. Okay. And also, when you do receive pots, make sure you're getting the right instructions based on how to perform Obi divination. Let's see. You're asking, what would you say is the relationship between being a devotee and an initiate? Can you be one without being the other one? Absolutely. So, and thank you for the question. It's a good question. So, as far as being a devotee, that's somebody who is devoted to the tradition. Ifa, you are dedicated to working with the Orishas, to learning more about them, to growing, to developing your character, walking in Iwa Pele. Initiation is a process. Initiate means to start something, right? And so it is a natural process, it's a ceremony. It is very important. However, just the process of initiation does not make a person a devotee. you actually have to put in the work to be a devotee, right? Because that has happened. It happens quite often, unfortunately. People will go and get initiated, and that's it. They do nothing else in the tradition because they think that you are just, it's all you need to do. You need to go through that ceremony, that ritual, and everything's good after that. It's not true. So you can actually be, you can obviously you can be an initiate and a devotee, but you can be a devotee and not be an initiate as well. And the level of your devotion is really going to depend on, whether you're calling yourself a devotee or not, or whether you're a true devotee or not, I should say it that way. What does a consistent daily or weekly practice look like if you only have the hand of Ifa, right? So I'm gonna say first and foremost, follow the instructions that you are given, right? So when you receive that device, somebody should tell you, whoever gave it to you should tell you how to properly use it. Now, there are many different ways that can happen, right? You definitely want to maintain taboos or warnings that you receive when you receive your hand of Ifa. You want to give it offerings on a regular basis. You want to, modify your behavior because there's no need in any of this if you're not trying to walk in evil Pele. Okay. Anything that you're told when you receive it, you need to follow those instructions. If you're not sure about something, get clarity on it. All right. Stay in communication with your Babaláwo or an Ianifa for a continuous relationship. Because, like I said before, Ifa and Isheshe practice is relational. It is not meant to be transactional, even if that's what you're experiencing. Because I'm not saying people don't experience transactional relationships when dealing with somebody working with Isheshe out of Nigeria or any other part of West Africa, but that's not the way it's meant to be. All right. Typically, you are going to offer, on average, most people do their offerings weekly. Some people follow the, calendar cycle every 4 days. Some people do it daily. It's up to you. You're gonna make that call based on what works for you and the Orisha that you're working with. Okay. You say that's a great question. Thank you to the person who asked you. That was aside you. Yes. Thank you for sure. Greetings, Yvette. Good to see you. Okay. So let's see. Can I build a relationship with your Orishas and the ancestors before any formal initiation? So, absolutely, you can acknowledge them respectfully. You can even pray to the Orishas before you go through the process of getting initiated. Absolutely, you can do those things. Okay. You can even do ritual work to the Orishas through a Babaláwo or an Ianifa, not yourself, unless you have a sacred icon, and even then, like, it's still limited. You can't just I'm gonna say this, in Isheshe, you don't give sacrifices to that Orisha icon on your own unless you have high level training to do so, which means that you would most likely be a Babaláwo or an Ianifa. And even then, you don't do it on your own behalf. Like, a Babaláwo or an Ianifa has their own Babaláwo or Ianifa who still does their ritual work for them, no matter how long they've been practicing, no matter even so what title they hold. They may be in the Odawa, right? They may be in a Rabba, but they still have somebody who does the ritual work for them in Isheshe practice. And I know it's different in the Diaspora. I'm going to get to that because I know some of y'all are going to be like, well, I do my own work. And yeah, that's not how it works in Isheshe practice. So you can do that. You want to be trained on giving offerings to an Orisha pot. And what I'm saying here too, when I say sacrifices, I mean an animal sacrifice. I mean shedding blood. An offering is a non-life force offering that you give, right? So that's not an animal. You're not shedding blood. It could be, dry gin, it could be palm oil, it could be salt, whatever it is for that particular Orisha, whatever they accept. And therein is the difference for people who may not completely get what I'm saying here. When you receive your sacred vessel, you can feed it those offerings, but you're not supposed to be giving it sacrifices, shedding blood on it if you haven't been trained in that process. And again, even if you have, usually this is still going to be done by your priest or priest. As far as ancestor reverence goes, veneration, it can begin through diaspora related practices, and not through the way we do it in Ifa. In Ifa, you're going to feed your ancestors sacrifices and offerings in the same way that you would feed another Orisha based on what they accept, not just give them anything. So in the diaspora, though, a lot of the ancestral practices are familiarly guided, or they're very much so individual. And there are a lot of things that you can do to honor your ancestors without doing the formal ritual work and things like that that we do in Ifa. And I encourage that wholeheartedly, because I feel like this is something that we do need in the diaspora. And therein, it gives you a way to start, practicing from a perspective of working with spiritual forces without rushing into dealing with Orisha pots and icons before you are truly ready, or before you even know if this is something that you want to do, right? That's why I say work with your ancestors for a while, 3 to 6 months. Develop a regular practice. Commit to, whatever it looks like for you, whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, going to give your ancestors offering. See if you can maintain that commitment. I'm not even going to say 3 months. I'm going to say 6 months to 12 months, right? See if you can maintain that commitment for the long haul, because therein, that's going to let you know whether you really need to take up working with an Orisha pot or not. Because everybody is excited when they first get it, because they're, ready for that connection and so forth and so on. But after so long, you may easily just, let that connection wane when you are not excited, or maybe you're dealing with pressure from family and friends who are saying you need to leave this stuff alone. Or it could be so many different scenarios, right? Maybe you yourself are not feeling it anymore. So there are just so many different nuances, and you need to know whether you're truly ready for that connection or not. It's no need to go and just collect icons just for them to sit around. Let's talk about a few boundaries and restrictions. Is self-initiation valid or acceptable in Ifa? This question comes up so much, right? So, no, initiation in the tradition, like I said from the door, Ifa is based off of a priesthood. You are going to go through a primary initiating priest for that experience, but there are also many other priests and priestesses around, because it is a formal process that requires the presence of multiple people, not even just the priest who is initiating you. Okay. It goes through lineage. For this to be official, people have to witness this process, and they have to make sure everything is done properly. You receive your lifetime due during this process. How are you going to initiate yourself when you do not know how to perform Ifa divination? Right? So, no, you cannot do this. This is not a legitimate practice, okay? It's just not acceptable. Is it dangerous or disrespectful to buy non-consecrated Orisha statues or tools and things like that? So what I mean by here is, you see like these, statues of Eshu sitting somewhere in a spiritual store, can you just go and buy that, right? It's not inherently disrespectful or wrong to do this, but you should also know their proper place. You don't take those devices and then begin to give sacrifices and offerings to them if they have not been duly consecrated, right? Because you're just wasting your time, energy, effort, money, and you could possibly be causing yourself some serious problems if you just start feeding this vessel, and you could be inviting all kind of spirits around you and you're not aware of it. And you get so much energy on you because that vessel has not been properly consecrated as it should be. how far can I go with studying the Odu without formal training, right? So you guys already know, like I am heavily into like putting out information about the Odu on the website. Check us out there, guys. Subscribe to us to the newsletter. The newsletter, these come out for free every Wednesday. That's our rotation right now, where you can get information about it. So you can absolutely look at those philosophical things in the Odu, understanding some of his messages, the foundational level learning. You can get a whole lot from inspiration, right? I absolutely love working with the Odu. But you are not supposed to try to interpret it or apply it to your case. So you may read like something about an Odu online somewhere, be it on my website or anywhere else, and you just feel like so drawn to the information, and it's like, yes, this applies to me right now. And you try to make that be the Odu that's generated, that would have been generated during an IFA divination session. That is not appropriate, okay? Because truly generating an Odu requires divination tools, knowledge, and understanding of the process. You can absolutely read it. I encourage you to read it because it is so replete with wonderful information that helps us to live our day-to-day lives and, sound ways, and it gives us encouragement and wisdom in so many different ways. But everything in there doesn't apply to you at that particular moment in time. So do understand that, okay? You should never try to apply it, or, definitely not going and taking anything out of it and doing any type of ritual work based on it. Not trying to apply taboos or warnings and things like that to yourself based on something you read because you just feel drawn to that. Well, this Odu says this, and I really feel connected to this Odu. And so this is a list of taboos that I just saw about this Odu, and I'm going to apply all of these to myself. You're going to overwhelm yourself with that if you try it. You're going to likely overwhelm yourself because all of the taboos aren't meant for you. You don't want to just apply taboos to yourself that aren't meant to for you, because that's just more burdens that you have to deal with. Okay. Said I was told not everyone is meant to initiate, and in the olden days everyone didn't. But then I heard everyone should know their Odu, and that's only through initiation. Right. So both realities are actually true, and thank you for bringing that up. Right. So everybody isn't meant to initiate. Everybody does not have to initiate. Some people live very full lives and they actually fulfill their destiny without ever knowing their lifetime Odu. Okay. Some people do need their lifetime Odu to fulfill their mission, especially if it has a very special purpose or something like that. If you're meant to be an Ifa priest or priestess, you have to initiate. Right? So you can't practice, you can't, learn the divination. Well, I won't say you can't learn it, but you are not supposed to apply the divination system if you are not properly initiated. Okay. So both realities are true in my opinion. Like you can't know it. You can't know your lifetime Odu without initiating. But at the same time, it is not like mandatory for everybody. It's a great thing to know. It'll probably help you out tremendously in your life if you know, but it's not like the end all be all. It's not just going through initiation, is not going to make your life just magically beautiful. That's not the reality of it. There are plenty of people who are initiated, who are properly initiated into the tradition, who are going through a lot of challenges right now. And there are people who have never been initiated, don't even know anything about the tradition, who live amazing lives. And they're not going through the challenges of a person who may have initiated, because we all have our own destined path. And some people just intuitively know, even so, like, I know this path, is for me a certain path because they feel it and they're strongly connected to their aura. So, yeah. Faye, you're saying the information on your website and newsletter has greatly supported my foundational learning and spiritual development. Thank you. I'm so grateful that it is helpful. It is like a joy to me because I love writing them. I write them ahead of time, and then when they come out, sometimes hit in that moment, even so for myself. So yes, continuity, maintenance, and logistics. So let's look at a few things related to these dynamics. Is it acceptable to perform my own ebo at home if my Babaláwo provided instructions? So, as I said before, in Isheshe, that is the tradition out of Nigeria, West Africa, even so. All right, Ebo is performed by a trained Babaláwo Iyanefa. That's how it goes. It is not performed by individuals. Ebo meaning the sacrificial offerings here. That's what I mean by that. Okay. Even so, some of well, actually, I won't even just say the sacrificial offerings. Even so, like the non-life force offerings, they are still done by a priest or priestess because there are certain incantations that go with them. It's not just even so about giving the items to the orishas. It's about like the invocations, right? And then sometimes there are other steps or ritual processes that go in. It's not just about shedding the blood or putting an offering on top of an orisha pot. You really need to know what you are doing. And as I said before, I know in certain diaspora traditions, the Lukumita, Santeria, Palo, and so many other things, right? People perform their own elbow on their own. And if that's the tradition that you're working with, you have to work those dynamics out for yourself as far as is this something that you really want to be doing or you feel like you should be doing. That's just not how it goes in initiation. Okay. Where can I source authentic ritual materials such as kola nuts and palm oil? So I would say, because this can be a challenge, I know for different people, especially depending on where you live locally. Amazon does provide this. So there are other retailers, Etsy, things like that, where you can absolutely buy like the kola nuts. The palm oil isn't well, it can be hard in your local region because I still have to actually travel outside of my local region to buy palm oil because where I live is not a heavy West African population because they primarily are the ones who use palm oil, not just in ritual work, but in cooking and things like that. But even so, definitely the kola nuts. I have to travel all the way on the other side of town, like about 45 minutes to a West African shop. It's actually owned by a Ghanaian woman and her sister. And this is, their shop is actually Ghanaian. It's not even Nigerian, but it's West African region. They all use the kola nuts and things like that for different purposes. So I have to go over there, and I just encourage people like try to find a local shop near you. Some Caribbean shops may even have it, just depending on, you know, their connection to the tradition or what have you. They may source those things as well. Otherwise, you can't get it online, right? And unless you maybe live out in a very rural place where you can't get Amazon deliveries or something like that, those are special cases, but very, very rare because Amazon does sell it. Etsy sell it, like I said. And I know there are plenty of other like boutique shops and things like that that you can find online that sell those items as well. Whenever possible, if you can't find it, I would say consult with your Babaláwo, right, for vendors that they may work with or they approve or something like that. The most important thing is whenever you're getting those advice, especially coconut, like you want to make sure that they're fresh and they are appropriate for your Orisha vessel, palm oil. It's usually packed up and preserved pretty well. But if it's rank, don't use it, right? Don't use it or don't be like, oh, this is messed up anyway, so I'm just gonna give it to my Orisha because I'm not gonna use this for cooking with. Like, no, don't ever give your Orishas anything that's spoiled or rotten or anything like that. How do I discreetly dispose of ritual remains in a city or a suburban environment? So herein, I'm going to say follow the instructions that you receive from your priest or your priestess as far as disposing of your ritual items. All right. Whenever you do so, make sure you're respecting the environmental laws, public safety guidelines while you are fulfilling your ritual duties. So understand that everybody doesn't practice our tradition. Even so, most people will demonize it and they if they see you doing certain things, they may just try to come at you for that very reason. Like, oh, you're dealing with some devil stuff, some demonic worship stuff, or what have you. So just be mindful of that reality. Usually you can just like throw it in the trash or maybe put it out in nature, but I say default to whoever you're working with to get that information. Okay, Alafia. I know who this is. I know that name. I just the handle. I just don't know your name. It's not coming to me at the moment. Okay. If yeah, if there aren't proper places, talk to your Ifa priest for guidelines. Okay. Alafia all. Thank you all for joining on all platforms. Instagram. I see you guys. Is practicing Ifa without a local community a long term path? So basically, can you do this for a while? So it's not inherently a deficient process. It's not like it's something wrong with it just because you decided you want to practice it. The reality is some devotees are very, very so much so disciplined and aligned, and they work for years at a distance away from their elate, and they're able to grow and thrive in the tradition. Okay. There are even some people who like just your personality, your temperament, you actually enjoy distance. That's actually my case. When I first started, I did want community because I wanted to see it up close and in person. But even prior to that, I've just always been a person like I'm very independent that it doesn't really bother me not to have a huge community and a lot of people around me. But like I said, just for the sake of understanding the tradition and being able to see things close up, I wanted that. I never got that, but I did want that. Because the place close to me, it just wasn't. I didn't vibe with it, and so I wasn't gonna force it just to go somewhere, just to have that connection. Because to me, vibing with it and having the right place is more important to me than just having a place to go, right? And so it's nothing wrong with you either if you are okay, you desire even so to practice by yourself, but you don't want to go and join a community. There's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with that notion, but keeping in mind it is a communal tradition. Okay. Some people though, on opposite, obviously will experience frustration because they like being around people. They want to be around community. They thrive in communal environments. So the key question that you need to ask yourself is whether it aligns with your path, with your personality, with your long-term goals, as far as if it is something that you want to do in terms of practicing the tradition without having a local community around you. Okay. Are you honestly content with that limitation? Or do you really and truly want the integration, but you're just settling? Because that's going to make a difference in terms of how you actually integrate into the tradition and whether you're satisfied with that level of integration. Okay. So you can do a lot of things at a distance. Okay. You can also, relocate if that's a reality for you. But, you do have to understand that certain things you're going to do, the study, even so, the offering and so forth and so on, that's fine by itself. It doesn't replace, it never will replace embodied practice. You actually being there, seeing things happen in real time, right? But with that reality, aside from somebody being like a priest or a priestess, the average person, even with the community around them, is usually not going to be around it every single day. They may go to be with their community maybe weekly or bi-weekly, even so monthly, just depending. It's pretty much similar to like being in a church environment, right? It's up to you how often you want that particular experience, okay? If it's not realistic for you to relocate or for you to be able to travel constantly, determine if you can do it periodically, if you can have a structured mentorship type of role going on in your life. If you can be held accountable, if you can't be held accountable by yourself, then you might need to rethink whether this is the practice that you want to go into or not. Okay. That being said, it's not like an all or nothing type of proposition. You can't have some kind of balance in that dynamic, but you do need to make an informed decision, I think, before going into the practice. Okay. Um, you said we spoke on Instagram. Okay. Okay. Maybe that was it. Thank you for that. Okay. I don't know what that means. Teddy, maybe you're calling somebody's name. All right, so how to supplement the absence of a local community? If you don't have a community, what can you do? I said before, you can attend cultural events in your area, not necessarily just the festivals, but definitely if there are festivals. You guys know, you've probably seen online, right? This huge, when was it at? Was it in Brazil where they're showing this big, huge, monstrous Umoja, right? Icon, because I saw it online and somebody, I think they were saying it was in Brazil, but then somebody corrected and said, no, this is not there. This is actually maybe they were saying it was in Rio. Maybe it was Rio specifically. And they were like, no, it's in another part of the country. Either way, it's this big thing that they're carrying on about how, they're celebrating the tradition in the Orishas in this grandiose way outside of the continent. And, Nigerians should be ashamed because they're not doing the same. And yeah, to me, it's basically just fueling the diaspora wars. But either way it goes, the cultural events, the diaspora events, and things like that, you can still go through to it. There are so many different aspects going on within the community itself. You're saying yes, it was beautiful, definitely. Brazil Carnival. Where was it in Brazil though? Because I think a lot of people were saying it was in Rio, but it wasn't actually Rio. It was another part of Brazil, right? I can't remember um exactly what it was. You guys have said Brazil did show out. Yes, yes. Um, you said what's the black beads for? Oh, you talking about this? These are these specifically the all black. This is for Ogun, right? And with the black and red, this is for issue. I don't issue day because Mercury is about to retrograde, and whew, I'm catching the energy already. And these are for Iyami, just showing you all of those. Yes. So, Faye, you're saying it was at the Rio Carnival 2026 in Brazil. So, okay, perfect. Yes, thank you guys for that. The internet and social media, like, seems like you can't have anything positive because people, I saw them getting into arguments under the post back and forth about where the actual event was and so forth and so on. But this is common. Even so, like in Brazil, like they do the celebration. Even so, you guys remember Michael Jackson? They don't really care about us. He did that video in Brazil at at a festival, and they had the Olodum shirts on, right? And so that was actually part of their culture as well, based on the Ifa derived traditions that are practiced there. Yeah, they showed out that whew, float was amazing. Let's see. You saying it was Brazil Carnival too, yeah. You thought it was Rio. Okay. You said you saw the African diaspora post. Yeah. Maybe again it's probably just people just arguing under it because I thought it was Brazil too, but then they was like, no, this is actually this place and this place. And I'm like, come on, let's not do that. He said this black and green came from Cuban perspectives. No, you referring to Ogun? No, it's actually out of Yoruba land, and there are plain ones. My son actually has the black and green is like this instead of the red. It has the green in it. If that's what you're talking about, that's why I did do the all black because I didn't want us to get them mixed up. So I just chose all black. You can do all black. You can do the black and green. As long as the Lakes are in the traditional colors of the Orisha, right? You don't even have to use the traditional beads. You can use something else, but the colors should coordinate. Okay. Let's see. You can also participate in structured online study environments. There are plenty of them. A lot of people have Patreon and things like that where they offer study pathways, etc. So yes, yes. Tarzan, you saying you have the black and green? Yeah, it's very common for people to have black and green. But yeah, that was my situation. I just didn't want like it normally doesn't have it never happens really because I keep mine in my room, he keep his room. But the reality is that, like maybe one day we sit them down somewhere close to each other. And so I just did not want that to happen. So let's see. Also, avoid unregulated discussion spaces that promote self initiation. Hybrid systems, you want to be careful of that because there are a lot of places that are promoting hybrid systems. If that's what you want, it's fine. Just be aware that that's what's going on. That's my point in this particular situation. You want to maintain consistent communication with your Babaláwo, Iyanifa, to preserve continuity in your practice when you are away from them. So talk to them, like I said before, guys. Have those conversations. Don't be shy. Reach out to them. Our people reach out to us all the time, and I love it when they do because it gives me an opportunity to like stop and slow down and really have those deeper level conversations. Create a long-term travel plan too, right? So for if you want to attend those major events, if you want to travel, back to West Africa or even in other places, even like Brazil, like we was talking about, right? You're gonna go and enjoy some of those festivals and things like that. Definitely, if you're going to initiate, you want to plan it out very, very well before you go through that process. If you want to go to any lineage gatherings, just plan it out. You don't have to go all the time. You can go all the time. I know some people who make it a point. They are going to Nigeria every year, no matter what. And so they do that. Okay. Let's see. And just go from there. I'm going to close up shortly. We're going to get into walking in the path of Ifa. So I got a few more things to cover. And you guys can go ahead and submit any final questions or comments that you have, and we'll try to get those out before we close up. You are saying your website is very professional and easy to use. Thank you for that. Yes, I've taken great effort in putting that together because I wanted such a sound resource for the community. Okay, so overall, guys, make sure that you commit to discipline study, learning Ifa, studying Ifa from reputable sources, maintaining respect, understanding priestly authority. Don't think that you can shortcut it. Like, I don't need anybody. I'm just going to go and do it my own. But if that is your mentality, it's probably not a great idea to practice Ifa tradition, right? Because it's not a solo practice. You need somebody else. And if you have this personality, I don't need anybody else, you're not going to enjoy the tradition because you do need somebody else to help you out. You say, yes, her website is amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Strengthen your character in alignment with Ori through responsible living, reflection, adherence to divine guidance. When you get readings, pay attention to it, listen to it, integrate it into your life. Keep on, practicing and moving forward day by day because even with a community, you still have to do the individual work. Nobody can do that for you, no matter how many people you have around you. Okay? Maintain a structured connection with a qualified Babaláwo Iyanifa through regular Ifa consultation. Work with them through accountability, long-term mentorship, relationship connections, things like that. As always, guys, if you're seeking rather deeper level transformation, you're ready to explore more about living in alignment with Ifa wisdom, visit us at asanee44.com. And before I get to the next week, You read one more comment. You said, love your lives. Looking forward to the next one. That's what I was about to talk about. Thank you so much for that. So next week I have how Ifa defines good character. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about Ifa Pele. I did a episode I think about a year ago on it, but I want to go deeper in it because I have many questions about what does that look like to walk in gentle character. So we'll get deeper into that. So that's all I have for you guys. You're very welcome. You're very welcome, guys. That's all I have for you all today. As always, you said, hold on. What's your take on what to do if you lost contact with your godmother? So this is a difficult one. If like there's no way for you to contact them and her, and you want to start practicing, I would say, talk to your Ori, your ancestors, and ask them to help you to find a different pathway to work with somebody if that's what you desire to do, right? Because if you want to still practice, there are plenty of people who can help you do that. That being said, you should ride with them. I'm not saying just go and, pick out anyone. You need to be able to vibe with the person that you're working with. They need to vibe with you because it is relational. Yes. So, yeah, you are very, very welcome. You're welcome as well, Faye. Everybody, thank you all. I appreciate you all for showing up. I say, please have a very blessed and beautiful day and